informed about a year and a half ago by one of our local Chamber of Commerce people that she didn't understand what, she was at a legislative hearing and she didn't understand what the concern was from TCSG about all of this math stuff, because didn't I realize that some of us have the math gene, and some of us do not. And so I'm glad to be here with those of you who have the math gene. But we certainly are pleased to have you at this conference. And one of the things that happened about a year ago is that in the Technical College System of Georgia, our commissioner was concerned about what's happening in remediation in our system and the large number of students that we're serving in remedial learning support courses. And he established a presidential task force in our President's Council to look at this issue and come up with a recommendation about what we should do about this. And so one of the outcomes of this task force was to encourage our colleges and our faculty to look at moving away from traditional programs and our traditional approaches to looking at what kinds of things could we do for students who needed learning support in our colleges that met their individual needs and that would help them provide quick access to our programs in a shortened time frame. One of the research studies that had been done indicated that we were enrolling a lot of students in learning support courses, but the outcomes were not that great. And in fact, our enrollment was 195,000 students, significant number of them beginning with us with learning support. And so we were getting new students and sending, unfortunately, unhappy students out of the door. So our colleges have undertaken some work in learning support redesign, some of them in all three areas. Many of them have chosen one area, and all anticipate having something done in this arena by next fall. And so they've started some work, and we are hopeful that in this next day and a half that you will learn some things, dialogue with one another, come up with some ideas to expand what you're currently doing or to try some new and different things to help students where they are. And what we want to do in that regard as the administration, and certainly I can say this on behalf of our commissioner, is to hear from you exactly what was said today. What do you need from us to help you to implement what you think would be best in terms of helping our students be successful? Because one of the things that is true is that despite what that chamber person said to the legislature about the math gene, is that there is great concern about the amount of money that's being spent on learning support with very little successful outcomes. And so what we don't want, because we know that we've seen this happen in the past, our legislature dictating to us what happens in our classroom and how we approach what we do with our students. We know that faculty do that best, and students tell us all the time that the people who have the most influence on their success in our colleges is the faculty person with whom they work. So we want that to be in your hands, but we want to help provide you with any resources that you will need in order to implement those ideas and practices and approaches that you deem necessary. So we encourage you to have a great time, and we hope you have a wonderful conference. Thank you very much.
I'm Houston Davis with the University System Office. It's always an honor to share the podium with Josephine, our excellent friend and partner in this work. Some of you may know, prior to taking this role, I was in Oklahoma, and most things Oklahoma and Texas, it's like the North going Zacks and the South going Zacks of Dr. Seuss fame. They just can't get along. But there's one place where Uri and his work down at the University of Texas, even in Oklahoma, there's been a nod to some of these conversations around modernizing and think about what's the role of math going to be. We always appreciate the voice that you bring to this, and it's just excellent to have you here today. So good to see you. One thing that I may just charge you with is that we are not going to attack this completion agenda without our faculty and our staff that are actually working with the students, coming to the table and coming up with the solutions. I am so energized at the fact that we've got math discipline groups. We've got other academic discipline groups that can be mobilized to come, and a lot of you represent those interests in coming together to really to get your hands around what the challenge is here. Because what I really believe, this is the choir. Math is increasingly important. I think everybody in this room would agree, regardless of what your educational plans are or your career paths. Most folks would agree here. But the real issue is what math for each of those educational paths. And what we have here is a unique opportunity as a community of scholars around the subject, as practitioners in the classroom, and as folks that are representative of those wraparound services to come to the table and begin, I think, building an awareness and an appreciation for the importance that math is playing in the future plans that all of our students have. Probably more so than that appreciation and awareness has been in the past, because it's across all disciplines. Many of you know that as we're tackling this completion agenda, and in Georgia it's taken on the name Complete College Georgia, it's about more meaningful degrees from students, and more students earning those degrees, and earn is a key word in that. We're not giving them away. Met with Faculty Advisory Council a couple of days ago, and we are not doing it through the McDonald's drive-thru in Georgia. So more meaningful degrees earned by students at a greater pace and greater rate than they do today. Okay? So taking that apart and having some sense about what degrees, what sort of preparation. We're not preparing folks for jobs, we're preparing folks for careers and to be flexible as they move through several different careers and probably a lifelong learning experience. It's been talked about in a cliche way, perhaps in the decades up to now, but it's clear as the workforce moves and ebbs and flows that lifelong learning is going to be critical, retooling, retraining. So in laying the groundwork for that, what's the role of math going to be now, when they're in the programs that you provide leadership and you provide instruction for, but also, what are those skills? What are those critical thinking? What are those reasoning skills? What are those lifelong skills that we hope to be able to entertain? I think that we're also, in this completion agenda, it's not just the existing workforce, those folks that perhaps they fit that adult 18 through 44, that is sort of the target zone of what comes to higher education for a variety of programs and services, but we also have to have a conversation about the emerging. You are going to be a part of helping us to better hone in on and better analyze and better articulate what are the academic preparation issues. I know that in this room there are a lot of folks that would look to, it's going to be critical as we're having conversations about Common Core standards in K-12, and we're having conversations about, as Uri talked about, backwards mapping from our variety of academic disciplines and career opportunities through what the checkpoints are that are needed at every grade level to be able to be successful. Your conversation here today is going to be a big part of that. Because in the end, I mean, if anything, the completion agenda is about higher education in Georgia, saying that, look, there are a lot of entities that are very important to the future of this state. But there is no entity more important than higher education to the next 50 to 100 years of the state. When we're talking about a knowledge-driven, human capital-driven economy, one in which it's more what you can do, what you can adapt to, what do you bring up here to the table, what's the value added that you have within whatever your sphere of influence. It's much more that than it is what can you do. So again, critical thinking, transfer of knowledge, developmental, of a global awareness, research, innovation, entrepreneurship, community development. Those are the things that are driving this completion agenda. And again, everybody in this room would agree that math is going to have a critical place as we work through that. The last thing I'll mention, and I was really pleased to hear Uri talk about, it's the importance of not just what goes on in the classroom, but us really think critically about everything that wraps up into the educational experience. I saw a presentation the other day that was looking at data and analytics. And understanding completion challenges. And I'll give credit here, Education Advisory Board is sort of the source of the central ideas. But the whole idea of how critical it is to really understand student demographics, to understand the population that's coming to us, to be willing to dig in and understand the academic preparation that individual or these cohorts of individuals bring to the table. What's the record of accomplishment that's there, and what are the predictive abilities that we have to be able to look at what the potential for accomplishments are in the future? Thinking about what their program goals are and the course-taking patterns that are going to lead them to the various competencies and standards that we want them to get to. Again, that's where the backward mapping along all majors to be able to figure out what are the math skills that are going to lead to that. But all that's going to lead to our ability to better predict and better be able to use diagnostic tools as students are working through our classrooms and working through our campuses to be able to both formatively and summatively assess where they are and what's going to be next to them, whether it's more education or it's into that career. But it's going to be teaching, placement, advising, academic support, interventions that are going to occur, transitions for success, how can we be a springboard, what's the root cause of problems as students navigate that, and then overall progress indicators that we can all agree upon. That is not easy, and I agree with what Uri said. This is not ceremonial sort of root, around rah-rah sort of work that we're doing. This is getting our hands dirty, rolling up our sleeves, putting on our thinking caps, and trying to be more innovative, more creative, and more meaningful about the engagements we have with students. You are so critical to what we're trying to do in the completion agenda, and I cannot echo enough what Josephine said. We need to know from you the scarce resources that are available. And sometimes that's money, sometimes that's time, sometimes that's commitment, and sometimes it's removing policy barriers that stand in the way of some activity that you know is critically important. We need to know from you what are those things that fit in those 3 or 4 buckets. How can we assist? Whether it's getting out of the way, removing barriers, providing perhaps some incentives, providing technical assistance. The conversations that you're going to have today are going to help us really hone in on those. And as I told our provost council yesterday, they were having their statewide meeting. If we can get to the 4 or 5 leading causes, challenges that we're having in meeting this completion agenda, and we can be collectively across our campuses and then in partnership with our technical college partners, honing in on those, we will make a difference, because what we'll have is not a completion agenda that's driven by mimicking what's going on in other states. It'll be a completion agenda that's going to grow out of our research, out of our experiences, out of what you know are the barriers that your students that are in academic good standing wanting to make progress toward a degree, but run into at all points along the way. I salute you for your attention to this. I very much appreciate the time that you've given this. I know good and well the work continues to pile up, both virtually and literally, while you chose to be here today. But do not discount the importance that you're going to play. This is the first of a series of topical conversations that we're going to have about key points in the educational pipeline. And I'm proud to say that we started with math. There are going to be others. Issues that we want to make certain that we put our system and the technical college system, whatever collective might that we can behind finding solutions. So thank you for taking the time, and I wish you great luck in working through what's a very complex puzzle. But if you're in higher education, you love puzzles and you've loved them since you were a kid. So thank you for your time and appreciate it.